there aren't as many stacking items in the game anymore. This used to be a better strategy, but you would get like a Sword of the Occult or all these actual stacking items, and they're like,
let's get you back to bed.
Yeah, when was Sword of the Occult in the game? Like
that was
7
like
years ago.
season 2.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 9, Episode number 16. Today is a special day. Mark Zimmerman has blessed us with the ability, with the honor to present the first team All-Pro, second team All-Pro, third team All-Pro, and all of the Kia All-Pro teams today on The Dive live. Are you ready?
I'm ready. First team for the Kia All-Pro. Who is it?
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The first team is Bwipo, Inspired, Quad, Masu, and Busio. Congratulations, Kia first all-team pro FlyQuest.
Yep. Yeah. I guess not that surprising. I do think there's definitely an argument for a few different roles. To me, the ones that stood out the most, I think, were potentially, like I voted for Bwipo first team, but I think Thanatos had a real argument. And I also think mid lane, I was a little bit surprised that that Quad actually did get first team. Obviously, he's really, really good, but I think as far as like his body of work throughout the split, I thought mid lane was actually quite close. I personally put Quid first, Loki second. I had Quad third. The votes were actually quite close for mid lane. It was only 11 points between first and second and third were only 4 points separated. So that one was actually pretty close, and top lane was also pretty close, 11 points as well between Thanatos and Bwipo.
Yeah. I mean, I think jungle was the closest. So it is interesting. It was all FlyQuest, but it kind of makes sense, right? Like they just look so good, and the vote happened, right after they beat C9. I feel like if C9 won that, it might have been different.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, congrats to them. Not a huge surprise, but it was pretty close margins.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people left like one member off, but then since
we all did different members.
yeah, different members, and so then all the FlyQuests, ended up winning out in the end. But yeah, I mean, they were all in contention for number one or at the very least number two in their spots anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, C9 and Fly were clearly the two best teams, so you kind of knew that they were going to be dominating All-Pro. For the second team for the Kia All-Pro, it is going to be Thanatos in top lane, Blabber in the jungle, Quid in the mid lane, Sven at ADC, and Vulcan at support. So it's Cloud9 minus Loki, essentially, plus Quid. To me, I think Quid actually did have another really good split and was, such a big part of 100 Thieves' success when they are winning. As much as earlier on in the split, I was really, really excited for FBI joining and thinking that he was going to become like much more of that big carry role. Towards the end of the split, still felt like to me it was back to okay, River and Quid, like time to carry or things are going to go bad. And I think, it's nice that Quid did get recognized for that. Obviously, it feels bad if you're the one guy on your team who gets like bumped down. But Cloud9 had a really good split, and I think Loki did as well.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that Loki was the one guy from C9 left off because I think I actually put Loki first for mid lane because I think mid lane was the hardest role. We talked about it last week, but he's looked really good to me. And Quid... Well, I think Quid has had really high highs, but I think he also has some low lows where I feel like he's responsible for a lot of the 100 Thieves throwing that's been going on with that team. So, I don't know. I mean, people rate different things, and obviously he's had some like incredibly hard carries. So, I think that deserves a lot of credit.
I think the beginning of his split was a little rough as well, maybe if people are looking far back when he first started.
Plus, I think, when we talked about it a little bit last week, but on pros, when they had the mid laner stocking and stuff, they all seem to rate Loki pretty low. And if you look at like pro votes and stuff, they definitely are pretty heavily towards Quad. It seemed like mostly Quad. And a lot of those guys definitely, talking about how he plays in scrims, because the reality is with all these votes, pros are going to base it mostly off of scrims. They don't even watch most of the stage games because they're usually scrimming or prepping for their own games. And so it's largely going to be based off that, whereas broadcast, people like us and co-streamers and stuff are going to be voting more for just the stage games.
That is always the weird part of playing pro is the majority of your time is spent scrimming, right? You'll have, I guess it's usually 4 or 5 days of scrims a week. That'll be like 30 scrims, and then you play 2 stage games or 3 stage games. And so, yeah, it's such a minority to them, but for us, it's all BC.
Yeah, I mean they've played against quad and scrims probably like 50 times, right? And you played against them on stage like one series.
Yeah.
So it's going to be based off of scrims largely.
Yeah, absolutely. And the third Kia All-Pro team is Impact in top lane, River in jungle, Loki mid, Yon and Core JJ bot lane.
I think the interesting thing is, well, expected interesting thing is that Impact got the least votes of anyone on any of the teams. He got, or 20 points. Either, I don't know how sometimes these are shown as points, sometimes these are shown as votes. But either way, the third place of top lane was like the most contested.
Yeah.
And so Impact barely squeaked on there, but it's obviously it makes a lot of sense with how much he struggled this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. You know, I kind of made my argument for Fudge. You know, on the last episode, Fudge did get a number of votes. I even saw him get 1 second team vote. I think from Inspired, if I'm looking at this correctly. I might. It's kind of hard to look at all the.
Yeah, well, it's
online.
probably because you're not supposed to vote for your own team.
Oh, it was actually Blabber. Blabber, I think, put him second. So it's been interesting, right? You know, like he got quite a few third team votes. I think it must have been pretty close. We don't actually have like the point totals for fourth versus third, but I do think that was a pretty close race. So definitely like honorable mention to Fudge, who I think had a better split, especially like after a slow start than people were expecting. It is interesting. Like third team is where it got way more contentious, right? And there were some more votes for different people considering, you know, different things and whatnot. It's also interesting, like Contracts got a number of third team votes. You know, Shading got a vote that I see. The most surprising vote to me though was Blabber voting for Abadaga for third team. I think is kind of crazy, but maybe he was popping off in their scrims or or something. But that one to me was really surprising to see. That was like the most surprising vote that I noticed, at least out of all the ballots.
Yeah, I think, you know, people can speculate on why he did that, whether he was just, you know, trolling. But it's weird because I talked to Blabber about it on the last C9 podcast about like all pro voting. We didn't go through every single vote, but like at no point did him voting for Abadai come up. We talked about most things. You know, he mentioned Fudge, he thought was playing really well. Yeah, I don't know. I do remember Abadage kind of popped off against C9 on Rise in one of their series. Like they had some close games, so
maybe just really stuck out.
Yeah, maybe it left an impression more
Maybe
so than other people. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, there could be different reasons for it.
Maybe he was trying to be a homie and save his job, and he heard that he was about to get released. Because we have some other news quickly following this. Unless you guys have any like further thoughts on these awards, the Kia MVP is going to be announced a little bit later. So we'll still follow up with that award. I guess we should also say the coaching staff, since that one was released even earlier. But you know. Coaching staff of the split was also FlyQuest. Big surprise. But as far as Abadaga, yeah, the news is already out as well for that one. Disguised is releasing him. And more recently, they just said that they are benching Scary Jerry as well. So a couple of new carries coming in for Disguise. They haven't said or leaked who the carries are going to be exactly yet, but very clearly they're looking at having to play for their spot, and they're looking like, okay, we got to go into emergency mode right now and put together a team that's going to be able to stay in.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I guess I was a little bit surprised by the community response I saw to Scary Jerry getting benched, because there was a lot of like, he did nothing wrong. You know, he didn't make any mistakes. Like, what are you doing? This kind of thing. And I definitely understand from the point of view of you picked up a rookie, he played like a rookie, and then you benched him, you know, after 20 stage games or whatever he played total. And so I definitely understand that point of view, but I guess I didn't see it like that. I just wasn't surprised at all because I knew that going into this year, the reality of their situation is there's a promo relegation like for that spot at the end of the year, right? So they're not really given a lot of time to develop. And as much as people aren't a fan of franchising, and like a lot of people were calling for, bring back promo relegation. Well, that's also what this entails, is that you lose that stability, right? Is that it's like you can't just play for long-term development when you're going to lose your spot at the end of the year. There's not going to be any more development. Like that's going to be that. So I knew that if they cared about having the LTA spot, they were going to make whatever changes they could, right?
Yeah.
And like that's just the reality. Is Scary Jerry is the worst AD in the league. Like I think that's just the reality. I don't think that's necessarily like, to be like some huge slight at him. Like he's a rookie and he got put in a situation that isn't very good. And like the team obviously was going to be bad. I think everyone kind of knew that from the start. And I think the question for me, like you can go back and listen to our power rankings episode. My main reason for putting them at the bottom was I was like, who's going to carry the games kind of thing, right? Like you don't really have a reliable carry. So to me, it wasn't surprising. It does feel bad, definitely, for Scary Jerry. I don't think that like the fact that they did this poorly was just on him or anything like that. It's a team effort, but they won one game in the whole split, right? And I think there's multiple teams in Tier 2 that look better than them right now. So they're going to try to make whatever changes they possibly can to try to defend the spot.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it should really be a surprise to anyone. I think it would be more surprising if they didn't make any changes to their roster, because this is actually, you were mentioning with relegation, and this is kind of what the teams getting relegated and coming into the league have looked like in the past. It's not that big of a surprise. A lot of the time there is this like massive jump between Tier 1 and Tier 2. So even if you're the best Tier 2 team, you could get completely slammed by all the Tier 1 teams, which is kind of what happened to them. So it just obviously wasn't working, and it would be weird if they didn't try to make a change, because like one win is pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me like even back to when Doublelift came in for TL to save them from relegation, right?
Yeah.
When they had that really really bad split and stuff, and they just like pay Doublelift to like come in and basically be like a ringer to make sure they don't get relegated. Teams used to do, more aggressive swapping, I think, because the reality was if you're at the bottom, you're like, well, we might not be here next year.
I wonder if you were disguised, would you try to like snipe somebody from one of the top Tier 2 teams?
Yeah.
Somebody
just take their best player.
Yeah, look at which team you think you're going to be competing against and try to take their player to disrupt them as much as it helps you. It's like, oh man, like
I would, because it's a good point, because the big question with these late season swaps is always, okay, so you have a problem that you want to change, but who are you going to replace this person with? Because it's not easy to get really high quality replacements at this time. It's a very awkward time in the competitive season. And so that to me is like the real big mystery, where I heard the announcements and I was like, okay, I kind of like expected something. But what is the real reveal? The real news is going to be who they actually are signing and why they're excited about signing these new players. I also want to note in this, the Scary Jerry one has a little bit different, because they specifically said they're still going to work with him and he's still going to stream.
Yep.
So as far as the people that are looking at like the long-term development of rookie storyline, that one it does seem like they're at least making some effort to keep up the like, oh, we want to build, Scary Jerry up, or, look at rookie talent or whatever. Even though they can't actually have him on the starting roster if they want to field, their rookie roster.
The other thing with like, building up rookie talent that I would look at is like, I don't think you're building up anybody when you lose every single game on stage, right? It's that like you can't fill from an empty cup saying. Because I feel like if you're literally the last place team losing every game, you building up rookie talent for your region should not be anywhere remotely close to your priority list, right? That's something for like the top teams that are winning and have their stuff together. They just need to find a way to win some games and look competitive, which I would say to their credit, they didn't get stomped that badly. Like obviously they didn't win games, but I think they had a number of games that they could have won. They weren't all blowouts or anything like that. So, maybe, some tweaks with the roster could help. I know they like switched their coach halfway through the split, which is always tough. And I think also they weren't like a 5-man team playing in 2-2 before this, right? Like they kind of just formed for LTA this year.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a lot of experience. So yeah, obviously tough situation to come into. not super surprising results, but they got their work cut out for them next split. I mean, it's not going to be much easier.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see who they pick up. You know, like you were saying about sniping players from some of the top NACL teams. I had heard rumors about a few of the Dark Zero players maybe getting targeted by teams, like potentially that like Shimmer, Zamudo, or someone would be getting picked up. And I think because people right now are mostly looking at like there's 3 teams from NACL, like Dark Zero, Luminosity, and then NA that are like near airport that are the 3 teams that people are like, oh, okay, maybe those teams would be the ones kind of fighting for promo relegation. So yeah, it does help you if you can make them weaker. If you make yourself stronger and you take some players from them, then it could be hard.
Strat.
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking about near airport. Like, I would love for like Poe Belter to be in, but I just don't think that he would want to.
Oh, 100% not. I think that's a lot of the, that was one of the first people that came to mind with Abadari and Cuts. I think
he's like a co-streamer.
He has some. I don't know exactly what it is. He has some affiliation with DSG.
Yeah.
Whether it's content creator or something. But it's always been this question of, I've talked to a lot of pros about this, and it's like, if a bottom LTA team offered you a spot, would you take it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, people have different answers, but I think what I've heard most people say is it's like it doesn't help you in any way to join a bad team and just get blasted.
If it's a super bad team, I agree, right?
Yeah, because look at Poe Belter.
Yeah, if a team with 1 win, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Poe Belter's personal player stonks have gone up being on near airport, right? It's like in a lot of their games, he's looked really good. He's been kind of like the voice of reason holding them together. He's been like the backbone of the team, I think, in a lot of ways. And so that's really good. But imagine it was him on DSG this split, and maybe he would have done way better than Abadaga. Maybe he would have hard carried them, but realistically, probably not. They seem fairly outclassed everywhere, and so if that was Pobe on DSG going 1-14 or whatever they went, that would not help him very much. That just kind of makes you look worse in the public perception. So, yeah, that's definitely a consideration or a hurdle even that DSG has to overcome, because if you want to get a really good player, you're probably going to have to pay him a bunch, because if you're a player getting an offer from a bottom team, it's like, well, this will likely tank your reputation because you're probably going to lose. So it's like, I don't know.
The same thing kind of happens in traditional sports, where often teams that really, really suck, to actually like rebuild their roster properly, need to find some way to like attract a star to then like basically be able to make the argument that we could be good. You know what I mean? It's like you need to be able to like bring in someone and be like, all right, guys, we just picked up Thanatos. We like stole him from Cloud9. Like, we're going to go for it. Like, we're going to try to win, we're going to build around him, blah, 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 that type of thing. And if you aren't able to make some sort of kind of like really cool signing or whatever, then it gets really, really hard. I know there is speculation about like, oh, what if they get some sort of sick import because they dropped Abadaga and he was an import slot, right? And people are like, oh, like they could get smashed or they could get, whatever. And I mean, if you get some sort of kind of like exciting player, then I think you're more likely to be able to attract people like Poe Belter or whoever, if that's even something that they'd be interested in, to be able to join the team, right? Because then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I could actually see how this could work, right? I could see how this team could do really well. Because it's true. I mean, it's just so hard when you join a team like that has so many problems. Even if you do pretty well, like League of Legends is such a team game, right? Even if you play at the exact same level as your opponent in lane and you like farm dead even against Quad or dead even against Loki or whatever, well, he's gonna get more help from his jungle and more help from his like support, because they're gonna be winning their lanes and they're gonna be ahead and they're gonna like ward better for him. And then in the team fights, he's gonna get more protection. And it's not that you can't shine on a bad team, but it is really hard to consistently look good when the map is kind of like falling apart around you. So it'll be interesting to see what DSG does and if they can bounce back for Split 2. River also said in an interview recently with NAMN that he was very likely going to do his military service in Korea at the end of the year, which likely means, that for most players, that is kind of their retirement, right? When you go and you do that for a couple of years, usually they don't come back to pro. Some players do. Ole did, for example. Ole did his military service and then was able to grind to I can't remember if it was rank 1 or rank 2, but he got raped to the very top
I think it's rank 1
of Korean solo queue again after his military service, and was able to prove like, no, I still have it. Like, I want to be able to join a team, and then was able to get a spot again after that. But for most players, it does end up being the end of their career. So it would definitely be sad if we lost River, because I think he's such a fun player to watch, and has been really, really impactful in League for a number of years.
Yeah, he's really good, and he's really funny too. I feel like he always has like good interviews and good vibes and stuff. And it is sad because this most recent interview, like you said, he's been talking about it for a while, and his teammates have been talking about it for a while. And then the most recent interview where they're talking about, yeah, you watched Deft, go off, and then you realize like that's gonna be your future, and everyone's already sad about Deft having to go. And then I remember after Split 100 Thieves, the 100 Thieves interview, after their series, Sniper was talking about, yeah, I'm gonna do this for River because it's gonna be River's last run. And at that time, it was one of like the early stages where I was like, oh wait, what? It was is that gonna be real? And this does make it feel like even more real, as we get closer. And he's like 90% sure. And but yeah, all of his teammates are always so complimentary of him. And I feel like he's one of the junglers that pushes the other junglers to be better and more creative, because we have a lot of junglers that focus a lot on farm, and River really focuses a lot on like creative plays and puts pressure on people from angles that they don't expect. So I'll be pretty sad to lose that from the league. I hope that the other creative junglers can kind of keep that alive, and we can have like multiple styles and have lots of people that are farm heavy, but also have people that are action packed, go for crazy ganks, crazy vision plays.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'll be sad for the league if River's leaving, but obviously military service is really important. It's something that pretty much all the Korean players have to go through, and it will kind of open up a spot in the league for someone else to come in, because I know there are like obviously a lot of really good players out there, a lot of junglers who could deserve a shot, and we'll see who we get.
NA's got good junglers. We've always made good junglers.
There you go. Spoken like a jungler himself. The patch is coming out, patch 25.11. And unlike previous years, where generally once you get to playoffs, it's just like locked on one patch, the teams actually voted it was either the start of the year or the start of the split to actually change patches during this playoffs, because it is like a longer playoff run. And I think, the general thought process was from teams that they would rather be closer to what the MSI patch is, instead of being like, stuck on a playoff patch that was a number of patches behind. So this is a bit of a change from what we've ever had done before. I think it's the first time we've really changed patches during playoffs. So it is coming out. I do think there are some pretty interesting changes. I was talking to Reapered after their games last weekend, and he was mentioning that he thinks both the Aatrox and Rise changes are pretty impactful, which is interesting. The Aatrox changes are basically increasing the sweet spot damage is like the main thing. They listed it as an adjustment where the passive damage is going down, but the sweet spot damage is going up, which makes sense that it would be more of like a skewed towards skilled players, right, who are really good at actually hitting those sweet spots. And then also the W goes from magic damage to physical. So that is going to be something that is, maybe affected a little bit more by like Black Cleaver and Armor Pen and so on and so forth. But I think the main change really is just that the sweet spot damage is going up 10%, which if you're continually hitting that throughout lane, it's actually pretty impactful, because you build a lot of CDR. People are getting like Shojin, Cleaver, etc., Sunder Sky, whatever. All the items have CDR, and that thing starts having like no cooldown. So would be interesting to see if Aatrox comes back a bit more as a potential like lane bully.
I could see it, because I always feel like right now when I watch Aatrox's, obviously unless they're really fed, it feels like his full combo, like the normal Aatrox combo is like Q1, then you chain them off of that, and then you like Q2 with your E to confirm it, keep them in the chain, then you like you Q3 them, and that never really kills people, but it gets them really low. So 10% more damage on the sweet spot, the W going to physical damage, maybe it's enough. If all of a sudden your all-in threat is like killing someone versus leaving them at low HP, that's a pretty big difference for matchups. So I would like to see some Aatrox. I think he's pretty fun. With
Yeah.
this meta.
It's funny because reading the change, they mentioned Black Cleaver multiple times, and they're like, "This is for fighter items. We want him to do fighter items, like Black Cleaver. So we're making his W into physical." And then my first thought is, okay, we're gonna see some lethality Aatrox back on the menu because everything's gonna be physical again. And the sweet spots are increased too. So if you get hit with a lethality Aatrox sweet spot, I feel like you can have some cool moments. To me, lethality Aatrox I thought was pretty cool. I didn't play that much top lane before, so I never had to like play against.
When Aatrox is
against
strong,
it
it's
early.
really unfun to play against. 'Cause
But-
it just feels like it has no cooldown on the Q, and you're just playing a mini game,
Well,
dodging it over and over.
So what was lethality Aatrox good outside of like Duskblade? Because I remember it being a thing with the Duskblade mythic item where you would get the untargetability when you killed someone, and I feel like that's pretty massive for being able to survive. Because right now, if you just go natty like assassin Aatrox, I don't think that's real. I think you just die.
I just remember because like I think Zeus was the one to start it. I don't know. Maybe he didn't start it, but
Voltaic has good ones.
he was definitely very good at it. So I don't know. I just think it's funny because like anytime you're gonna make something, you make everything to physical and you're thinking, okay, great, Black Cleaver, so I can shred physical. Well, those types of changes also are exactly what, lethality would want to make everything physical. So you can have the burst damage, but they also clearly have that in mind because they do mention it. It's just that I think the first round of changes,
There's no changes to say that you have to build Bruiser. in.
exactly. 'Cause they say, oh, we've got levers to be able to change Bruiser versus lethality builds, but they haven't used those in this patch note. So I definitely,
Buttons.
at the very least, I expect people to try it, and it does feel fun to play like lethality like burst damage builds always. So
I mean-
we'll get some more data and see if it's actually good. At the very least, I think it'll be fun to try.
Even on last patch, Voltaic and Cerildus and stuff are like really high win rate items. So it's obviously like is very risky, and you can make the argument in pro that like it's harder to pull off or whatever, which is true. But also your team can set you up better. So who knows?
Yeah.
It could be interesting.
Aatrox is always going to be a super snowbally champion. So if you're snowballing, obviously you are one-shotting people, you heal a lot. But if you can't get to that point where you're not killing people, then like
You're turbo
you're
useless.
just feeding hard.
Yeah.
So we'll
Definitely.
see.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think another little cool one. It's not a very big change, but when I saw Twisted Fate's name on there, I was like, oh, it is always cool to have more options for like playing the map. I just think since the game is so much about team fighting now, and with all the objectives, and it's just fun to have some more options like for creative play and cross map plays. The Twisted Fate buff is very small. Just some tiny bit of like 10 flat damage on his Q. So I don't expect it to like do anything crazy to the meta, but just seeing the name up there along with like you're mentioning Rise possibilities, that's another like split push champion. Oh, cool. Maybe we could get some like push pull comps, especially like in Fearless. You can have some different strategies might come out.
The Rise ones I think are actually crazy though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you read through those changes, but the amount of damage,
the ult
passive
thing? Yeah.
passive ult, it's like the overload flux damage that like the bouncing passive is 20 more damage at rank 1, and that can apply on the entire minion wave, right? So it's like you're actually doing so much more damage to the minion wave. Yes, you're like, your early levels are going to be slightly weaker because W is 10 damage off of it, but I think that's like not really that impactful. Maybe in some like super spicy matchup or something, but the fact that your wave clear is getting buffed that much just means it's that much easier for Rise to invalidate the early game when it's like even a bad matchup where you just go, you dump your mana, you just insta one-shot the wave, and you just base. And you can kind of just repeatedly do that. And Rise already kind of did that in mid lane, but this is just making it even easier. And then once you have enough mana, once you have your Catalyst and your tier and whatever, all of a sudden you're one-shotting the wave. You don't have to base. Now you can actually move with your jungler. Now you can actually go to objectives. Now you can look for potential realm war plays, which I know is their kind of reasoning in the patch is that they want Rise to be able to push the wave and then do something. But obviously it does really let you just invalidate a lot of matchups when you just can one-shot a wave. So I think this is a potentially really dangerous one. Anytime you significantly buff wave clear for a champion, it really can change how that champion functions, right? Like the inverse was true with Pyke. When they took away a lot of the wave clear from Pyke, it went from being this champion that could actually situationally be a really good solo laner to all of a sudden you can't really do anything because pushing the wave is just core to playing League of Legends, especially in solo lane. So I think this is a potentially really dangerous change. Ryze was already getting played in pro. I think with this, Ryze is going to be like an every game thing.
Yeah, and it's a the overload flux damage is the percentage increase, and it's like for the early ranks, so you can like start to get playing that split push a lot earlier. I think actually plays into those types of team comps a lot better, and we were already seeing some Ryze games, not like an overwhelming amount, but
yeah,
I definitely agree. I think it will be.
It could be a big one.
It will be fun. I was actually hoping the Rengar ones, just because I like I don't play Rengar like in my solo queue ones. I play them in my more for fun like flex queue or like normal game ones. But it's only 10
Like
seconds.
Rengar in normal games, you just want to bully people.
Yeah,
or what?
He's like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, I do. Because like when I play solo queue, I'm always playing for the team, and I'm like volley bear, and I'm like making early plays, and I'm a lot of frontline and stuff. When I'm playing with friends and it's like for fun, I just want to play a full assassin, and go around and kill people, get all your friends being like, "Wow, you're so good! Look at all these kills you're getting."
Wow, you dumpstered that silver jungler.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice, man.
So I'm definitely good. Rengar was already I felt like in a pretty decent spot. So I feel like that's definitely a solo queue for fun play. There's no way I feel like that is getting into pro though. But yeah, as far as the patch goes, those are really the only ones that kind of stood out to me.
Do you think the Samira changes would do anything? Like the effectiveness of lifesteal you don't think it matters at all?
I mean, when I read that, it just makes me think that she's going to be even more of a
Snowbally?
Yeah, exactly. She's going to be more snowbally. I don't think this really helps with her problem. And the whole drain tank thing, to me, always feels a little problematic because when your survivability is tied to your sustain, kind of like Aatrox and, with Samira, I know in the past her builds have been like BT, shield bow.
Yep.
And so all these things are always so much better when you're ahead versus behind. And I always think that feast or famine play style is like not my favorite. I think it's a little bit better when there's more like comeback opportunities and it's not just like so binary. It's like, all right, well, I'm ahead. I can't die anymore. I'm just gonna heal everything. Or I'm behind and yep, I'm doing no damage, so I'm healing nothing and GG's. So it's not my favorite, but maybe it'll make her a little better. I think she'll just be more snowbally. I don't know.
That's kind of what my read too was, that it was just going to make it even more snowbally. But she's, to me, is like the Master Yi of AD carries, where when you see this like late pick and you look at your team and there's no CC, it's like, oh god, it's going to be one of those games. Like they like 5-pick Master Yi and you're looking down, you have like AD carry top, AD carry mid, AD carry bot, your jungler is, I don't know, like Evelyn is your only CC or something like that.
That is a dodge, brother.
Yeah, I know, but you see these kind of things and you're like, do I have to?
I always see
that's
Samira,
how I feel about Samira.
Yeah.
Like no CC on my team. All right, I guess we lost.
To me, Samira feels like Draven, where it's like the punish the autofill guy super hard champion. It's like, I'm autofill bot lane. It's like, oh, I guess I'll pick like Ezreal, play safe. And then it's like their bot lane. Duo 90% win rate, Smurf, Samira, Nautilus. And you're just like, well, this one's probably a loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Horizon Focus also a little bit interesting, obviously a minor change, but it got 5 more AP and it got even cheaper. It's only 2,800 gold now, and that's getting into the range where it's like this thing is actually really cheap. Like,
I do think it was asked before.
Yeah,
so
no one's really buying.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting when you start pushing items down to that cheap, and it has a lot of AP on it, right? Like 115 AP is actually quite strong. So it's interesting. I was talking to some people who were saying they were thinking they're like could potentially change builds to where champions could just go like a tier or something and then into like Horizon Focus first item because they feel like it's getting cheap enough, or on some champions that like don't even necessarily need like a tier or whatever to survive early, where you could just do it with Manaflow Band or Palm or whatever, that they start feeling like Horizon Focus could potentially start pushing its way into first
Rushing
item territory.
first item Horizon Focus sounds wild, but I mean, if the numbers are good enough, enough AP,
a lot of
cheap,
AP, and it's pretty cheap.
Maybe that would be crazy though. That would be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It should be a fun patch. Hopefully, we do see some changes in pro play with it coming out. And we are going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back right after these messages.
Ready, set, go!
I'm at 47%.
Oh, I'm on 63%.
Man, I'm at 50%. Boom! 80%. Winner! The Kia EV9 can go from 10% charge to 80% charge in just 24 minutes with DC fast charging.
Welcome back to the dive driven by Kia. We just had week 1 of playoffs. It was 3-0-3-0. We're still waiting for the first game 4 of LTA North history.
Me, you, and Flowers were talking before casting the first series, and we're like, all right, surely we're gonna get some longer Fearless series, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are like, yeah, 5 games, and I was like, whoa, let's start with a 4, please. We can just get the 4. We couldn't even get the 4 games. We can't get anywhere into Fearless to explore, some of the really fun team comps. And I was looking forward to all right, let's see, how can we get deeps in some fly quests, crazy strategies? Can we get next week though? Okay, for sure, the upcoming week we'll get a little bit deeper and get a bit more creative. Honestly though, these 3-0s, well, one of them more than the others, It was the longest 3-0, so it was still a sweep.
The FlyQuest one, yeah.
The FlyQuest one was our longest 3-0 that we've ever had.
In NA history, yeah.
Yeah, and 2 of the games were the reasoning is there. Those were very close for quite a long time. So even though they were sweeps, they were still interesting games.
Yeah, I mean, I think by most accounts, Shopify should have probably won game 2 in their series. I think that was one of those Doctor Strange, infinite possibilities. They found the one way to throw angles. So I don't know. That was the double
QSS
the look in
game,
their
right?
Yeah, that was the
Oh God,
the QSS from Palafox game into
2 of them built it though, right?
B-Boy did
as well.
Yeah.
I know I saw an interview, I think it was with Seos after.
Yeah, Seos thought it worked.
Their whole team thought it worked. So
on Mordekaiser?
Yeah. So none of them knew. Because he was like, oh yeah, we built QSS. He's like, yeah, it's good against Mordekaiser. And it was an NA Men interview, and they're like, no, everyone's talking, and Archer, whoever was giving the interview, is like, no, everyone's talking about it. It doesn't work. He's like, no, it works. Are you sure? But yeah, it doesn't work. And,
yeah, I mean,
when we were casting that game, I was like, do I even want to talk about it? I could give them the benefit of the doubt that it's maybe used for something else, but it felt tough, right?
Yeah.
There was almost nothing useful for it to be used against. There was Rel's Q and Senna's W,
and
he didn't even use it on Senna's W that one play.
That's
he got turbo caught.
That's what I was
so
thinking,
painful.
because I was like, oh, he just got killed and he was rooted by Senna thing. So I was like, okay, he'll be able to use it for that in the future, I guess.
No, he had it when that happened.
Oh my.
Yeah, I think he actually even got ulted one time by Mordekaiser and didn't press it. At least that's what someone was telling me, but I didn't go back and check. But they bought it thinking that it worked on the Mordekaiser ult, and then they didn't even try it. So
yeah,
I'm really confused as to what the logic was there for the whole thing.
That's a pretty
I know it
bad
doesn't work.
look.
Yeah.
But apparently it's that's why they bought it. So then why would you buy it thinking it then not use? I don't know. The whole thing was confusing. Because they both sold it by the end of the game, right? Or at least just
B-Boy kept it.
Yeah.
He upgraded it. But yeah, I don't know. It's there's so many interactions in League that I don't think you can fault people for not knowing every single one. But something like this, I'm pretty casual with playing the game lately. I mostly watch or just play with my friends. But I knew this one, right? It's I feel like it was a pretty it was pretty pronounced change they did with Mordekaiser. It was it wasn't really a quiet thing. So I was pretty surprised I didn't know this one.
That was my take as well, was I'm not surprised that someone didn't know it, because there's just a billion changes and there's so much stuff in League that it's impossible to know literally every interaction, right? Unless you play the champion all the time and stuff, you're going to learn these interactions. So I wasn't surprised that Palafox or whoever didn't know it, but I was surprised that no one on their team knew it. That was what was surprising to me, because usually it's one of those things where someone will know it, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I would expect Fudge would know it because he's going to be the guy who plays against Mordekaiser the most, but I think there is some degree of is it worth bringing up in the middle of the game and risking tilting your whole team over it? Because it's like,
Yeah, sell that shit. Cut your losses. Okay?
I don't know. It could be a vibes thing because I feel like vibes are going to be bad if you're just like,
Really? You're just like, oh, QSS doesn't work against Morta anymore. Sell that.
yeah, I mean, it probably would be helpful to do, but I could see someone not wanting to because it's just like, damn, I'm gonna like embarrass this guy, make him think he's dumb as hell or something. But maybe they already do if he has it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of a lose-lose, I guess. But I don't know.
I also don't think it decided the game at all, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny because Inspired on pros, he was like, yeah, and Ezreal and Azir both should hard beat Mordekaiser in his ult anyway.
Yeah.
So he was even like laughing at like why did they even think of buying it in the first place?
The Azir one I could see. The Ezreal one I'm like, does he?
Yeah.
The Ezreal one surprised me. Like when I've played a fair bit of more. Like I don't know. I guess if you miss every ability and he hits every ability and he's kiting you around or something, but like usually like these little kind of like shifty characters are ones that you can kind of just like beat down. Like he had Rylai's and stuff. Like you just apply your passive and walk at him.
Whenever I'm fighting Mordekaiser in the ult, the big number one thing is if I can dodge his Q. Like if you dodge the isolated Q, then you've got a shot.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm thinking is like, oh, he
shift
sees an angle where you
But
shift
that's not
the
a
Q.
hard win to me. That's
Yeah,
like I'm not as a Mordekaiser scared of the Ezreal killing me if I'm ulting the Ezreal. Azir, I think
Azir won when he
Azir
was,
could beat my ass.
and Palafox did win one when he was like pretty far down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Azir, I'm like, yeah, that's one of those ones that I feel like if you're ulting them to take them out of the fight, not to actually kill them. Like one of the things I mentioned this on broadcast, but one of the things I remember when I was playing some Mord, I started watching some of these one tricks in Korea, like that were playing Mords. I always like watching one tricks if I'm trying to learn champion. And one of the things I noticed is that like often when they were having games that weren't having a great game, like Bubba wasn't having a great game in this one, they actually just, instead of what most people do, which is they ult someone weaker that they can beat, they actually just always ult the strongest person on the enemy team and then just like run away from them. And they just use it as like CC. Like they're just, or they like go Zonias early and they like do whatever damage they can. And then they're just basically doing it as like, okay, I'm useless, but their 20 kill person is stuck in the Mordekaiser ult with me for all this time. So your team can maybe win the 4v4. And so I always thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's certain champions that you just like never beat 1v1s. Like you ult the Vayne and then they just kill you for free, right?
Yeah.
But the Ezreal one I thought was interesting when he was talking about that pros. I don't think Ezreal really beat like hard wins. Like maybe
I wouldn't expect Ezreal to win. Maybe he just meant this game because Whippo was, like you said, not having a good game. He was like, I don't know, 1-7 at some point. Like he was kind of running it down. But yeah, I don't know. It was not a good look for Shopify. But man, their player cameras after that game looked so rough, and I don't blame them. Like that was
they were close.
Super heartbreaking game to lose, especially just the way it went down. Like, obviously Senna scales really well, but it felt like they were in such a dominating position this game. And then, I don't know, like the end of the game, it felt like Palafox and Contracts were just like taking turns getting caught in the most bizarre ways possible. And yeah, I don't know. It was a heartbreaker for sure.
Definitely. I remember looking at the cams when I was casting with Kobe like during this game. And after that, I was just like turned over and I was like, oh, 3-0, like just like you see the cams. I think it was Palafox maybe after game 2 where he's just kind of like sliding out of his seat like this and stuff, and it's like those are the most heartbreaking games where they were 7,000 gold ahead. And they lost that game. Like those are the worst feeling games in all of League where you are super far ahead and you slowly lose and it's just you can feel it slipping away and it's just getting further and further. And it's a 51-minute game. And they had Soul. They're up 7K. And you lose, like that is just
it's hard to not just feel like we are terrible if you lose this game. Because it's like it's such a long one too. And you went from winning for most of it, you're feeling good. You're like, oh my God, we got this, guys. And then at the end, you lose and you're just in complete despair because I would rather get stomped in a game, 15-minute loss, everyone gets just hard farmed than this kind of game where it's like you absolutely should have won. Yeah. Just chain of terrible decisions led to you losing. Because then it's like, I don't know, you need really strong mental to be able to like push out these thoughts of just like, okay, like we're
Yeah.
just bad, like we can't win even with a lead, like how we should absolutely be winning this. So
It's literally backed by science. It's actually funny because like a lot of the feel good part for dopamine is in anticipation. So when you are in a league game and you are winning, you're already feeling the gratification of being like, yes, because you are anticipating winning and you're like, you're almost there. And
Waiting for your reward.
yeah, and then when you crash way harder because you were like, that was mine. I should have won. I was there. And that's why I was actually surprised that they did look competitive in the beginning of the third game too. Like they came out and they actually had
Me
some.
too. I thought they were going to get ran.
Yeah, they actually had another game where they did make it competitive for a decent amount and look decent. Of course, then like football just got out of control. The Renekton ended up over 7,000 individual gold lead, and every team fight it felt like he was like slice, flash, dice on top of B-Boy, and he was just stunning up the Zaya and just annihilating this guy. And then he would also be more tanky than the Scion when they were like trading top laners, tanking or whatever, inside 4 other people because he was so far ahead in gold and he just bought all these extra items. And so he actually just hulked out in that last game on the Renekton. So Whippo,
Whippo actually makes Renekton look like a completely different champion than anybody else. I mean, maybe Thanatos, like he's really good at it too, but I don't know.
Whippo in team fights, I think, is just a different beast.
Yeah, it's crazy because nobody thinks of Renekton as like a good team fighting champion. Obviously, he got the ulti buff lately, which helps with that, but Whippo's always made it work. Just the ability to make so much space. Either if you're not killing the carries, you're threatening them in a way that makes them have to, not hit anybody else. He takes pretty much the maximum amount of damage that he can. Doesn't usually just go way too deep and die. So yeah, I mean that was just insane, especially because Masu was kind of getting caught and killed in the beginning of like every team fight that game too. He was doing the Lucian thing where you play like really aggressive, getting the other team's face, and he was just dying for it.
he kept getting shockwaved, huh?
Yeah, I actually will say I think this was one of Palafox's better games we've seen from him lately. I think the last year or so has been really rough for Palafox, but I think he looked pretty good on the Orianna. He was having some good places. Lane went really well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good, but unfortunately they couldn't deal with the Croc.
Yeah,
I think B-Boy's build this game was slightly criminal.
Oh, the BT second.
Yeah, I was watching with Sneaky and Double Lift, and they were not happy about that one.
I mean, Whippo had a monster game, but also Shopify's bot lane got just absolutely clapped. I felt like it was hard, as much as Masu did maybe go over aggressive at times and get caught a couple times and things like that. He did something like double the damage of B-Boy in this game. And I remember this one because I think we were doing the Nuke Duck interview at like level 1 or whatever it was, and we were just watching the bot lane 2v2, and we got to see the full like bot lane 2v2 while they were doing this interview. And Shopify tried to go like super aggressive early and didn't really get much from it. And I'm actually going back to the VOD check when they actually were forced to base, but it's like they had like 7 CS, I think.
Yeah, it was I think
base.
level 1 or 2. B-Boy had to just fully give up a crashing fat sacked wave.
Yeah, he has 7 CS. It's 250 into the game. They have no heal, no barrier, no potions on either one of on Seos or B-Boy, and B-Boy's at 100 health, and they have to base. And they're actually able to like play the like lane swaps pretty well to like bounce around and keep them relevant. Which I don't honestly know if that's like a good thing or not, because like in a lot of ways I hate that you can get like slammed that hard in a 2v2 and then just like farm even somehow because you just like avoid them by lane swapping constantly. And it's like lane swaps are getting earlier and earlier again, right? Like now we're dodging lane swap detection, but it's still a 3-minute lane swap that's happening, right? Like it's not a level 1 lane swap, but it's like not that far from it. And so it's kind of weird, but it's like, yeah, they got slammed in the 2v2. And then, of course, there was like that B-Boy moment late in the game where they're by the dragon and he auto-attacked the blast cone and shot himself into the pit and killed himself.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy.
Which was like obviously a rough moment as well. But I thought B-Boy was super outclassed by Masu in this series. And I do think that was a big part of why they lost in these 2 games where like they had some windows, right? Like they had some opportunities and stuff. But especially if you're playing a game like this game 3 where you have Mundo, Sion, Rakan, it's like you are a 2-threat team. Both your carries have to play really, really well. Like that is the pressure that is put on you because you just don't have enough damage otherwise, right? So I felt like B-Boy definitely was outclassed. Whether or not the 2v2 was like his fault, I don't know. But I just thought the 2v2 was kind of interesting to talk about because I don't know what your guys' take is, but watching that and then seeing that he could kind of go even in farm after that by basically just like never interacting and chain lane swapping felt weird to me. And it just feels like teams have now figured out a way to like circumvent the laning phase again. Like if your lane can go that bad and you can still farm even afterwards, I just feel like there's something wrong with lane swaps still.
Yeah, I mean, that was my concern with. I'm actually one of the people who is glad they put in this like super heavy-handed change to lane swaps of like lane swap detected, alert. But on all the patches after that, they kept like reeling it back. They're like, okay, like the detection's going to be like a little bit less, because it's like at some point people are just going to try it. Like they're going to go to the limit, and I get you don't want to have the collateral damage on solo queue, but I don't know, like. If you make it too lenient, then people are just going to swap.
Kind of already there because people at first were only swapping for grubs. Now they just swap a couple minutes before grubs.
I personally, I'm okay with this version where you got beat down, and so then your team has to go into emergency mode later into the game, because like we're saying, like this is a few minutes later into it, and then they end up swapping, and you're going to lose something because if you're getting pushed in, you're at the very least, losing something on the swap. And even if you can farm, then okay afterwards, sometimes your top laner is going to have to pay the price.
Sometimes your top laner goes down 7,000 gold.
Yeah, sometimes.
That's just the cost of the lane swap. That's just the matchup.
The single domino falls, and then you end up on that timeline. You're like, well, there you go. Now you're going to have to reap what you sow, and you deal with this Renekton later on.
Renekton's not going to be flashing on the Scion, is he?
It's all because of the level 1 trade.
Yep.
No, but seriously, I do think that there should at least be some strategy, because like because then otherwise there's no recourse if you're just getting completely beat down. And if you got completely beat down that early into a game, and then the system's like, alert, bring this person back to jail, come here and get your ass beat again. Like,
I hear you.
You stand here and you look at the minions dying, or
I guess, but I also just feel like if you get outplayed, like, that hard, or it's like goes that bad for you, shouldn't there be like that punishment almost of like, isn't that kind of what's exciting about League, is seeing people?
I think there still
yeah, you messed up in the first 30 seconds. Now you should have 30 minutes of torture.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just feels like, okay, great. We stopped lane swaps. They had to lane bot for 3 waves, of which they interacted for 2. You know what I mean? Like,
is they swap on the 4th wave?
Yeah, it was before 3 minutes. At 250, they based.
Oh my goodness!
And they went top. It's because like you get there, and it's like the lane swap punishments are already over. So literally at 250, they're basing. They're not even trying to farm the 3rd wave because there were no health. And
imagine your fudge in this game. Like, you just lost that horrible game 2, and then you're picking Sion into Renekton, which is a hard matchup, and you just hear your bot lane say, "We can't lane. 1 minute in, we're coming top."
Literally first wave, they all end and killed themselves.
They call you up. They're like, "Hey, buddy."
Yeah. Like it's.
Hey, how's the lane swap sound? Yo, we gotta wave pushing out. You want to get even more behind?
It's 250. Seos has used 2 potions as heal. B-Boy has used his barrier and his potion, and has 150 health at 250. And so it's like, yeah, like what do you do? I mean,
they must just not know the matchup, because that was, like you said, completely self-inflicted. Like they went for that play. They both started W. It's not release Irocon that doesn't one-shot people anymore, and they just hard lost it. Like they took like an even trade with the wave pushing toward them, and then they just
if you don't slam that trade, Nami just is so happy to take that because Nami has sustain.
Yeah.
So you're going to heal your back up, right? So it's like, that has to be such a dominating trade for it to actually work out. They did get Masu's Ignite and Boostos heal, so it's not like they got nothing, right? But they were still obviously in an unlaneable situation. I don't know. I just think it's interesting where it's like, yeah, lane swaps are gone, but if you can be basing at 250, like having gotten pounded in the matchup and then just swapping out of it, it's like, That to me feels a little bit weird. And it feels like then, well, does it even really matter like how the first like 2 waves go if that's all you have to lane for?
Okay, how about this? There's a toll when you go to a different lane.
You gotta pay the price?
Yeah, if all you want is a bigger punishment, then they set up riot police going into each lane, and they're like, all right, where's your mid lane? Where's your mid lane passport? Yeah. If you're a bad player, then you pay. There's like some
global entry. You pay for global entry.
You're like, I know I'm gonna get my ass beat, so can I get this like month-long coupon?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even mind if there was some incentives to stay in the lane you were supposed to go to, but
I think counter picks are fun, right? Like
yeah. I definitely
like,
agree with you. It's just, I'm not a game designer. I feel like any of those things, you always have to think of like what else is going to happen.
Yeah, it's just I always think of like, what would the experience be if that was how my lane was going in solo queue? And it's so wildly different, right? You don't just get to lane swap out of these matchups. And I know one of the things that a lot of the designers talk about is they want pro play to like look like what you're experiencing, right? Just at a much higher level, and to be able to kind of have that like aspirational play and stuff. And so I've always thought that the lane swaps do kind of go against that. And, I like the idea of having risky counter picks and having these things, and people are busting out Draven and stuff. But if you can just lane swap out of it after 2 waves, then it doesn't really feel like much of a punishment anymore.
Yep.
We also had the C9 TL series, which was the one that I thought was actually going to be like really close, really competitive. It was not. C9 absolutely stomped them. There were some close moments, I guess, but overall it did not feel very close whatsoever. And I do think that, we saw like UG getting nervous at times for sure. I don't think that should be a surprise. I talked about it last week where I thought this should be considered like the biggest matchup in mismatch in playoffs, right? Is Blabber, who's one of the best junglers ever, going into a week 1 matchup against a guy who has 2 games of tier 1 play, right? I think it's normal for him to be nervous. I don't think that it was like just his fault or anything like that, but I did feel like I could see him being uncomfortable in some of these situations, going a bit early on some of these dragon plays and things like that. APA, I think, definitely did not have a great series either. And it just felt like TL was kind of out of sorts. The start of, I think it was game 3, looked really good, and then it like kind of just fell off very, very quickly. They just didn't really feel like they got anything much going besides, I thought bot lane was doing pretty well, but that's kind of felt like the story a lot for this year.
Yep, Impact got a solo kill. First solo kill of the
immediately
split.
Killed himself and summoned his maiden as he was dying to
got a solo kill.
Yeah.
That's all I'm seeing.
Yeah.
It's it was rough for Team Liquid, absolutely, because I remember saying I was kind of nervous for C9 going into this because, I mean, that's why it's always so hard to judge team strengths, because coming into this week, if you just look at their game from last week, like TL stomped. UG looked like him, like he was like the chosen one, the jungler that they've been waiting for. Like TL looked like, they were whole once again kind of deal. And then C9 just got absolutely stomped by FlyQuest. So it was like, if that's what you saw coming into this, you would kind of expect TL to win. But nope, not even close. C9 just turned around and stomped them. I talked to Blabber after the game. He said he thought UG was nervous. He said he did the normal nervous jungler thing where he just kind of like farms his camps and doesn't go for anything. And then, they switched to Umpty game 3, which I don't know. I mean, they said in an interview that they were splitting time, but I think that if you like from the outside, when you see this kind of thing of like, a team is having issues with a roster and then they make a roster change and then their new guy plays 2 games, you get stomped, and then you bring the old guy back in, and it's just like...
Well, Spawn said that was literally their plan regardless, is that's how they've been practicing.
Yeah, I mean, he said that.
I don't know. I mean, were you surprised, though, that happened? Like, even literally when we were talking before the series, I said as if they lose 2 games, Umpty's coming in. I felt like that was, like, so obvious that was going to happen.
I'm not
surprised. They're not just going to let themselves get swept if he's playing bad, right? They're going to try something.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Yuji was actually playing bad, but... I don't know. It seems weird to me. I think anytime that happens, it's like, I think 6-man rosters is just weird in general. I'm not a
Yeah.
big fan.
I'm not a fan of 6-man rosters either, but it's like this was what they were saying they were going to do, and I wasn't surprised at all. I don't think that it's like, oh man, it was clearly just all jungle gap and UG's fault, but like their first 2 games were depressing. They got absolutely slammed.
Also, if I have something I can change,
Yeah, change anything, man.
I just kind of hit the emergency button, break the glass.
Sure. I mean, I get why they did it, but it's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
it's not like it's a good look.
And
right?
it feels bad
Yeah.
for UG. Like I totally see your point, right? Is it's like, oh, okay, if he's nervous or whatever, you're showing him that like you don't have that confidence in him or whatever. But yeah, no, I felt like TL just never really seemed to get much going. Game 3 was definitely the one that felt like, okay, you have have some momentum here. Impact gets this early solo kill. Jan was in a really good position and stuff. But Impact after getting that solo kill, I was actually really excited because I feel like Blind Pick York, I don't know why it's becoming a thing. Like, there's actually so many matchups. Like, I've mentioned Aurelia a bunch of times because that one is just impossible to play. But, like, Mordekaiser is a fine answer. Sion is actually super good into him because you get full benefit of, the HP stacking from the ghouls. You can get infinite HP.
Oh,
Cho'Gath is really good. You literally, your ult at level 6, as soon as he summons Maiden, you just ult it one-shots it. It's actually, like, ridiculous. And you just get sustain off the ghouls from your passive. There's so many matchups that are really, really hard. Fiora is another one. There's so many matchups that are, like, very difficult to play. So I don't really know why it's becoming a thing as far as blind pick. Gnar, I don't think is like, it's like you got countered. It's just Thanatos is a really good Gnar and he has really good movement. And like, if you don't hit all your E's, you're going to lose to that, right? And so even with that solo kill, I was like, oh, cool. Like Impact, looked like he's built some confidence on this, but then immediately walked in the towers. He's going mega, which is like not like a Yorick thing. That's just like a knowing Gnar thing, and died. And that's so punishing because then you just have no pressure now from like now until infinity. And I feel like that was really tough. But they just even when they drafted, like game 2, when they drafted, I was like, okay, like they are just going to play for Jan. They have, like Impact on Galio. They have this Braum. They're just going to play to scale and play for stacks. And Jan, it felt like got ahead pretty early. Like their lane was going well. I think it was that the game? Maybe Sven was like they were defending an invade or something. I can't remember. But anyway, Smolder was in a pretty good position, stacking well. But it just felt like the game was literally over before he was even involved in it. So,
yeah, I get the good plays that TL did make. I remember being like these Nocturne plus Nico engages for a bit. Like they had a couple of those. But yeah, overall, this team needs a lot of work. And Spawn was tweeting after, he was like ashamed. He was mad, but also like kind of ashamed, which, always looks rough. Like I feel like the whole team looked pretty down. So I am a little bit worried for TL now because kind of like Meteos was saying, like they were coming in with some good momentum and it felt like everybody was up. Core JJ was, the GOAT, won the early game for their new jungler, and everybody's happy. They're working out with the Swapperoni, and bottom lane is playing good, and Impact's back on tanks. But I'm back to being like pretty worried for TL as we progress. So I mean, even in some of these matchups that are coming up pretty shortly, where we think.
They lost 5 straight against C9 now because they lost 2-0 the series right before that too.
Yeah, so I'm definitely worried for Team Liquid a bit moving forward, but we'll see because Spawn is here. I guess this is like the first like big emphatic like, oh no, the Spawn returning and being in person didn't work. This buff did not save us from the beatdown from Cloud9. Maybe him being here and the coaching, and they'll be able to like learn a decent amount from it or be able to recover in some way from this. But I think a lot of problems, about a lot of questions are just like further emphasized by this series for TL.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly worried for TL against Dignitas or whatever, but it is concerning for their like championship hopes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even for a potential lower bracket run, because like the TL that we saw now, I don't know. I mean, 100 Thieves could be pretty scary. I even feel like Shopify looked pretty competitive, and I was watching that series and like maybe like these kind of like 1-to-1s don't always work, right? But it's like Shopify was pretty close against FlyQuest, who I think is the best team right now. So it's like, does Shopify then, do they win those games if it's against like 100 Thieves or a TL? Who knows? Like that kind of napkin math doesn't always work. But yeah, it was definitely, I think, a concerning series for TL. Did look scary. Jan went on pros afterwards and was like, obviously he's not going to flame his team or anything like that. But he was just like, yeah, just had this crazy dream, it was a nightmare, blah, blah.
He uttered the words, "What do you want me to say?" probably like 5 times during the episode also, which is always kind of scary. Plus, they are
like, I'll say it for you. Your minute Jungle ran you down.
Plus, they're nerfing his Lucian and his Smolder, which he really likes both those champs. So this patch change is also not the best patch change for him. And this does feel like, he is still the hope for this team when you look at it.
I was a little surprised by the way TL drafted as well, because I think if coming from last week to this week taught us anything, is that like you probably shouldn't read too much into one series, because obviously, last week TL looked really, really good. C9 did not, and this week it was the opposite. So I think if I was TL, I would say, like maybe their drafting priorities could try to enable Jan a little bit more, because he was playing like Jhin, Smolder, Zeri, which they're not bad champions, but they're not necessarily like super lane dominant, run the game type of champs. These to me seem more like side characters. It's like the stuff you want to play when the rest of your team's carrying, and I just don't really see that as like TL's identity right now. I think they'd be better off trying to get like Varus, Kai'Sa, some like Lucian, just some bot laner that has a lot of agency who can take over the game. So
I feel like C9 played around that a little bit though, because game 1 they I think they first picked Varus, if I recall.
Yeah,
and then they banned out Kalista, they banned out Ezreal, they banned out Senna. So they were throwing some bans and stuff as well. I can't remember the order of the bans, but I know Lucian got banned.
Yeah, he did
too. So they were obviously like aware of that. Like, do you think there are enough of those just like super aggressive good picks that you can just like blind something? Because to me, it's like Kalista and Lucian are the two that kind of fit the bill that people are comfortable to blind, like Lucian, Melio, and Kalista plus X. But also feels like we haven't seen Kalista, for example, do that well when people have like Ashe or Varus or something as an answer.
Yeah, I don't know about Kalista. I feel like she's just like a lane bully. Kalista to me has always felt kind of like Ashe, where it's like you have a strong lane, but you don't really turn into a carry. You're just kind of like a utility AD carry. So I don't know if that's necessarily the angle, but looking at the draft, like game 1, Lucian was available. They could have picked Lucian into Varus. Like maybe that's not a good matchup they wanted. It got banned in the other 2 games. I think they had the opportunity to go Kai'Sa as well. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's like necessarily the reason why they lost, but I just think that if I was TL, I would look to be trying to put like the game in Jan's hands more so than putting him on like Smolder, where I feel like, I don't think the difference between AD carry players when they're on Smolder is going to show that much.
It's interesting because I feel like when they went Smolder Zeri, they were trying to give him like the 1v9 champs, but they were trying to give him like late game 1v9 champs, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's always tough because you can go like, okay, we're gonna go like hardcore early game, snowbally champ. I'm gonna play Draven, or I'm gonna play Lucian, or I'm gonna play Kalista. But then your other lanes lose, and your lead doesn't matter when the game's over.
That's true.
And then it's like, you're like, okay, never mind. I'm gonna play to scale. I'm gonna play like team fighters that I can 1v9 on late. I'm gonna play Zeri and Smolder, and I'll just stomp them late game. But then your team has died too many times by the time you get there, and your lead doesn't matter. Because I feel like both the Smolder and the Zeri game, he was actually in like really good positions, and had the game just been played like from parity or close to parity, I feel like he probably could have carried those games. But it's hard.
The Smolder game specifically, they didn't have to go in and fight at these dragons and stuff so early. Like the one where Yuji walks up right next to the brush by dragon, and Vulcan, really good play right out of the brush, just locks him up, boom, kills. Jan's over there like, okay, like I'm farming like a madman on my Smolder, but like the team has to play differently if they're gonna pick that. I do like whether it's like, okay, can you play early game carries or late game carries? I feel like Jan can play both.
Yeah, but
can the team play around him differently depending on which champ he's on, or do they like still make the same calls?
Yeah.
I guess it's like
The smaller one was tough for
it's,
sure.
Yeah, it's always like, okay, like maybe you're good, you want to play this champ, or you're good at whatever this is, but can the entire team adapt to whatever the win con is for that champion?
Yeah, it's tough. On the other side, how'd you feel about Cloud9?
Thought they looked pretty good. Much better than last week, obviously. And yeah, they seem solid.
Blabberby! Blabberby win!
Yeah. I mean, they're still first picking Vi. They've got that high priority on her, even though it doesn't historically feel like what they do best on. But I mean, I think they just recognize this as a strong champion, and I like that they don't really shy away from it, even though like they've lost games on Vi, like people meme it and whatnot. I think it's a bigger mistake to have a bad experience on a champion and then just like drop it entirely. Because I think as soon as you're a team where they're not going to play something, for example, this whole series, Liquid has been banning Yon Gwen against them every single game. And I think most pro teams know now at this point that like APA does not play Yone. And anytime you have that, it's like your draft is just going to be worse, almost no matter how you cut it, because you have to permaban it or give it. And both of those are bad. Like when you don't have access to a really strong champ, you're just at a disadvantage. So I like that, they're still prioing it highly, even if it doesn't seem like from the outside it's one of their best picks. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, just all around, seemed like they played well, solid. So that's nice to see.
It'll be interesting to see what they cook up to, because they have 2 weeks now before they play FlyQuest, because next week we can start talking about those matchups. Is going to be the lower bracket matchups, and it'll be the week after that then we would see that upper bracket matchup, the rematch between Cloud9 and FlyQuest. But we do have 100 Thieves rematching Shopify, so the team that put 100 Thieves into the lower bracket is now the team that they get to actually face here in the best of fives. So I think that is actually really, really exciting. And then, of course, the other matchup would be TL versus Dignitas. Should we start on Shopify 100 Thieves?
We'll eat our dessert first, because I agree. I think this is the better matchup.
Yeah.
Both because of the history, very recent history, and the stakes along with it. Because it was pretty intense after that series. Sniper picked the Aurelia, and then he was talking about I didn't really know the format, so I don't know if I really would have picked that champion. And 100 it definitely did not pay off. But I also thought Shopify played well to win that series, and so I think a lot of the other pros are giving Shopify a lot more credit as the weeks go on. I forget who it was. I think on pros, Inspired as well, I believe was fairly complimentary, and they were talking about, Shopify definitely could win this rematch. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. The 100 Thieves players seems like they really have a chip on their shoulder, and they're like, they didn't think they would deserve to lose or should lose. And so in a best of 5, if you actually lose in a full best of 5 Fearless, then you have
no excuse.
You have no excuse, no recourse. And so a lot is going to go, I think, riding on this series, because I think it should be close with how they've looked. But both these teams are really volatile. Both these teams have had really good games and have had games where they just get caught out and look pretty bad.
Yeah, I think this is one of the hardest series to predict that we've had. And I don't know, it doesn't even feel to me like they're super evenly matched, but I couldn't tell you who's better or not, because they both just feel very inconsistent as teams. I would say if you're just looking at the players, I would probably say 100 Thieves is stronger in a roll-by-roll basis. Maybe not top. I think Fudge's been playing pretty well, and Sniper's not been having a great split. But yeah, like you said, Shopify has been doing really well against FlyQuest, and even when I was talking to Blabber recently, he said he thinks Shopify is like actually good right now. So yeah, I mean maybe they'll win, but I don't know. 100 Thieves I feel like they're better. Like that's what my gut says.
I mean, also just even based off the records, like as much as like we can look at that one best of 3 that they did win, it's still like Shopify before this series was a 6-12 team, so not even counting the fact that they got swept. And I mean, 100 Thieves was like has 10 wins, right? So they did have like double the wins that they got in this split. Yeah, they did lose their best of 3 to them. But even just like purely off of record, it's 10-6 team versus a 6-12 team, right? So it is a team that has a lot better record. I do think 100 Thieves still should be favored. I think that like when you look at the totality of the split, they have looked significantly better. Shopify, even in winning positions, has really struggled to close out games. But that being said, like that's like my logic. But then when I just look at it with like kind of more like emotion or what I'm feeling, when I was watching that FlyQuest series, all I could think was, if Shopify are playing against another team, wouldn't they have won these games? Like, I kind of just like, and I don't know if I'm just getting baited because Shopify, I feel like I've had so many of those games, even versus worse teams than FlyQuest, where they like are in a winning position, where they are playing well, but they can't close the game, they can't actually kill the Nexus. So I don't know if they've gotten past that, but it does feel at least, and it does look at least as though they are better and that they are improving. So yeah, I couldn't help but watching that and thinking like, is Shopify favored? But like, I don't know. Am I crazy?
Well, there are parallels because we always bring up, oh man, a lot of these 100 Thieves games are like they look really good, and then someone gets caught, and then that Shopify game, or the second one, they were looking really good, and then like you're saying, Contracts, my boy, went up super late game, gets caught multiple times, boom, then they start to throw it away. It's like, the parallels between these two teams are so prominent that it's like I could for sure see either team winning. Be like, wow, they have a really good early game. Wow, they're making so many of these good plays. They're really proactive. Both these teams are very proactive. Both these teams like making a lot of vision plays. Mm-hmm. Both these teams like making a lot of picks, but then both of them also are some of the teams that give up the most late game picks. So that's why I feel like this is the hardest one to predict, and people are going to fall back on one of two reasonings. Either like you're saying, the overall records and standings for 100 Thieves, and overall people would say they definitely have looked better, or the Shopify one would be, well, they looked really bad in the beginning, way worse in the beginning, but have gotten better over time, and then that kind of culminated in them actually beating 100 Thieves in the best of 3. Then you can also have the other take of like, well, Sniper wouldn't have picked Aurelia if they were taking it, more seriously, or knew that it was going to put them into the lower bracket. And so you've got like, I can definitely see like the two sides.
7 layers of coke.
Yeah, I can see the two sides right now though, where you're like, well, Shopify have been scaling, or 100 Thieves overall, look better, but.
So the one thing, like I fully agree that like both these teams have like kind of similar issues, but the one thing that I struggle to get past to actually predicting Shopify
mid lane.
Well, mid lane, but also, I mean, just when I look at the players, kind of like lane by lane, and think about like who do I think is better in most roles, I favor 100 Thieves pretty consistently. I think top lane right now, I'm definitely favoring Shopify. I think mid jungle, I'm favoring 100 Thieves for sure. I think AD, I'm favoring 100 Thieves. And then support feels maybe more like a toss-up, I guess. I do think Ayla's been playing pretty well, but it's like the reality is, but even with that, like individually, I think 100 Thieves is really good, but then they managed to like throw away games and look bad even with that. So it's hard, but yeah, I do think, I just find it hard to believe that Quid wouldn't beat Palafox in a best of 5. And maybe that just feels mean to say, but like that's kind of what it comes down to at the end of the day. I just feel like Quid has been so much better than Palafox that it's really hard for me to imagine him losing a best of 5 to him. But maybe it would happen.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I think you hit it pretty spot on. Just like when I look at their carries, I don't know. B-Voy has not really stood out as like super impressive to me this
especially
split.
Compared to last year. Last year I thought
I thought usually B-Voy was kind of like the guy you could rely on for this team, but this split it just feels like he's kind of playing off. I don't know if it's just because they've been losing so much, but like his decision making, he goes between like playing way too safe or like in his most recent series like flash ulting in Azael unnecessarily and then just dying right afterwards. Also item builds kind of questionable. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot more faith in FBI in that one. And if you have a weaker mid and AD than the other team, it's actually really hard to win against them. consistently. Maybe you can do it a little bit, but no, I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I'm leaning toward 100 Thieves.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope that it's going to be an exciting close series. I feel that it's going to be an exciting close series.
Exciting close 3-0.
Yeah.
Never getting a game 4.
Because it's just, I don't know. I feel like 100 Thieves, even though I favor them, a lot of the players individually, they clearly have their mistakes and they're going to be able to be punished and stuff. So it'll be really interesting. What do you think?
To predict? I mean, yeah, this is for sure the hardest one to predict. Like I said, I could see literally, I could see any scoreline for this best of 5, and I could craft this. I could go backwards and craft the story, I guess.
Yeah.
As far as
just pick one, man.
I'm going 3-2 100 Thieves. We're getting 5.
I'm gonna go 3-2 also. Yeah, I guess I kind of lean towards 100 Thieves. I'll go 3-2 100 Thieves.
I mean, that was what I was going to say, but I'll say...
Do the other one. Give us the other one.
I'm not going shop... What? You're going against contracts to steal my opinion? No, I already said 100 Thieves. I'll say 3-1 100 Thieves, I guess, to be different.
Okay.
Nice, there you go.
A sweep. The other series we have is, of course, a TL versus Dignitas. This is kind of one of those, the almost the inverse of how I was feeling against Shopify, where it was like, yeah, Shopify lost to FlyQuest, but I felt like they were pretty competitive, and I felt like I came away feeling relatively positive about their chances in the lower bracket, whereas TL just got absolutely clobbered. I felt like looked really bad, but then I'm like, yeah, but you're playing Dignitas, like it's a very different caliber of opponent. So I still think that TL should be pretty heavily favored, but it is an opportunity for Dignitas to really make a splash here because TL looked the weakest that they have looked in really a long time.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way that I'm looking at also is like a lot of these ones where you come in and they are mismatched for sure. I think everybody agrees mismatched and everybody will default to Team Liquid. Where it gets interesting with the stories and leading into it and how competitive it can be is that Dignitas should be looking at this as one of their good shots. Surdy, in his interviews, is always talking about how hard they are practicing, almost to a degree that it's kind of worrying, where he's like, I'm only getting like 6 hours of sleep. I was like, well, the sleep and recovery is also very important. So yes, hard work, but also, recover enough for Dignitas. I think every story that we build for Dignitas will be one of an underdog, but one of an underdog that has an angle to try and pick out. If you want to try and pick out this TL jungle situation and you want to try and like get in there and make both of them uncomfortable and maybe they're trash talking and talking about bringing the other jungler now or, trying to get in their mental, like Shaden it comes from solo queue pretty strongly.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it means what it means. You try and craft some angles here for Dignitas because he actually, the Olaf pick at the end of their series versus Lion, that was a goated pick. So we had them on the lounge. We had the bottom lane.
Yeah.
It was me and you, and we were talking to Tomo and Isles afterwards. And, they did say like Shaden chose Olaf. It was Lyra's idea of like a couple options he gave.
Yeah, I think he said Olaf or Nidalee.
Yeah, something like that. He gave a couple options, and so then Shaden did choose the Olaf out of that, and like it was really good into what was already showing, all this heavy CC into the anti-comp, into the Lilia type of thing. And, he had a big impact. So, maybe especially if this series gets a little messy and does go deeper into Fearless, you can definitely see some angles for Dig.
Yeah, I'm not too optimistic about Dig's chances here. I think they did beat Lion, which proves they're capable of winning games, but I think Lion did not look very good in that series. I think Lion didn't show up. I would still, even after watching the series, I would still, probably favor Lion against Dig, even though they just lost to him. So I would be extremely surprised if this wasn't a 3-0 for TL. I think that TL would have some major problems, and we'd be seeing like some kind of implosion within the team if they lost this one. So I don't think that's likely. I'm going to go 3-0 on this one.
I mean, it is definitely hard to like predict Dignitas to win, but maybe I'm just reading too much into watching them against C9, right? Like Liquid against C9. But I do feel like it feels way more of a possibility, like way more of a threat than it has in a long time, right? I do think that genuinely, like TL's top side did not look good at all against C9. You know, mid jungle top. If I was Dignitas, at least, yeah, I still think they're heavy underdogs. Yes, I'm going to predict TL absolutely, but I do think at least Dignitas has like a clear avenue of attack, right? I think to me, you try to make plans around like attacking Impact and attacking whoever's playing jungle, and you try to play heavy for top side. And I feel like that is maybe your opportunity. If you could go into this and play like neutralizing bot lanes and just you're playing like Ziggs bot, or you're playing like whatever, just some sort of like wave clear, non-interactive bot lane style against Yon and Core. Like if they can manage to do that, and if they could put pressure onto Impact and Umpty, that I think could be like a potential way in. I don't feel like Surdy has actually really done this much, but like Surdy, was like a range top laner guy and all this sort of stuff. Like I would love for him to go into this, embrace the fact that you're an underdog, look for counter picks top, like look for, spicy, risky picks and stuff like that. Him and Shaden play that sort of style. Like these are two guys who are super good in solo queue, could maybe try to, abuse the fact that they're comfortable in maybe some of these matchups that Impact wouldn't be playing. But yeah, I mean, TL, I think overall is just like they just have better players. And the reality is if their top side doesn't get completely blown out, then I think, Yon and Core are going to be able to like get them across the finish line here pretty comfortably. So I just want Dignitas to go down swinging. I really, the disappointing result for me for this series would be if Dignitas just like comes in and just drafts like absolutely standard all 3 games, like, the exact same stuff that TL is drafting, and just kind of like quietly loses in peace.
Yeah. No, they gotta, try and take this opportunity at a time where TL are coming off a rough series. Maybe like you're saying, go for Impact. There are strategies because there aren't as many stacking items in the game anymore. This used to be a better strategy, but you would get like a Sword of the Occult, or all these actual stacking items, and they're like,
Let's get you back to bed.
Yeah, when was Sword of the Occult in the game? Like
that was
7
like
years
season
ago?
2.
But Dark Seal is very, very good. And so if you're Surdy and you're like, well, I could play an AP carry champ, Impact's KDA in their series versus Cloud9, Thanatos admittedly the best laning top lane in the entire league. Impact was 4-13-3. And he has had pretty rough, stats for most of the season. UG also, UG and Umpty both also had a lot of deaths. But like Dark Seal starts for tops and for jungles, or not even starts, but like getting it later, and then
Dark Seal start for jungle.
not start. You have to.
I'm reporting you for that.
you literally can't.
So what I'm hearing is Azael wants him to play Vayne top, and Kobe wants him to start with the Dark Seal. All right, let's not have you be their coach.
There's so many junglers where you can buy Dark Seal on your first back very, very easily. It's
first back, not starting with.
And
you just combine the two. You can go Dark Seal Vayne.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm expecting to see if he's listening to this.
I mean, though, it's true that Impact, like in that series, yeah, it's against Thanatos, but like he did look weak. But I do think Impact has looked way more vulnerable throughout this split. I still think he's played a lot better than Surdy. That's like, let's just be honest. It's a very lopsided matchup, just like as a team matchup. But I do think you at least have avenues of attack, and yeah, I hope Dignitas can lean into it.
I'll go 3-1. I'll give Dig 1 game.
Okay.
I want to give them a game, but I feel like it's probably 3-0 TL still. I just think the TL bot lane is still like absolutely really playing well, and even if their top side does not play well, I don't know if Dignitas have what it takes to really punish them. Like if they could play their best games, then I think they could make it a lot more competitive. But I need to see like Kaney really stepping up and being like having a better series. And I think it's up to Dignitas top side.
Yeah. I mean, I just give them 1 game because Dignitas, they've had all these longest games in the LTA. It's a best of 5. One of these games going to get messy. It's going to go super long.
I can see it.
But yeah, TL should definitely be favored. This one's a lot more lopsided than the other one. That's kind of why we're more excited about the 100 Thieves Shopify one, but it should be a fun weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the week after is actually really going to be fun because we would have like the winner of these lower bracket matchups. So you'd have like a potential, TL Shopify or TL 100 Thieves, and then your upper bracket would be C9 Fly. And I think those would both be really, really exciting. So definitely looking forward to that. That is going to do it for this episode of The Dive driven by Kia. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you all for tuning in. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. The LTA returns this Saturday, May 31st. TL is going to be taking on Dig. We will see you all there.